But move on to something else completely different, something completely out of the world. A former government UFO expert is warning that Britain is wide open to alien visitors and that the consequences of not monitoring extraterrestrials could be huge. Nick Pope, who resigned from the Ministry of Defence UFO project, says the department looking into UFOs has all but closed down, and despite a high number of credible sightings. Let's speak to Nick Pope. He joins us both in the studio now. Nick, thanks very much for coming in. Now, just reading some notes about you, I mean, you were a sceptic about these things to start off with. Just explain what converted you in the first place.
Yes, before I joined the UFO project, I knew nothing about the subject at all. I thought it was all just lights in the sky and stuff and nonsense. But then I looked at some of the old case files. The MOD's UFO project dates back to 1950. Since then, we've actually had about 10,000 UFO sightings. Many of the witnesses were pilots, police officers. Sometimes these things were tracked on radar, and on occasions jets have actually been scrambled to try and intercept these things. But consistently there have been a hardcore of these things whose speeds and manoeuvres just leave us standing, and that to me was interesting and slightly concerning.
So now you say Britain is wide open to alien visitors. What do you mean by that?
Well, yes, I mean, that's a slightly dramatic way that I put it, but yes, my point is that our air defences do seem to be regularly penetrated by structured craft.
Regularly? How
regularly? Well, certainly when I was running the UFO project, I got about 200 or 300 UFO reports each year.
But you didn't believe they were all credible?
Oh, absolutely not. I investigated each and every one of them, and I found that about 80% could be explained, 15% insufficient data, but 5% extremely interesting.
I think people will be surprised to hear there's an MOD UFO project in the first place, but I mean, how far up the ranks do UFO believers go?
Oh, I mean, over the last few decades, some of the great establishment figures have actually been involved in the whole debate about this. There's been a sort of skeptic versus believer dogfight at the MOD for years. But I mean, for example, Lord Hill Norton, a former chief of the defence staff, spoke out quite passionately about his belief that these things were real and that there were serious defence and national security issues.
So you're concerned now because that unit has been wound down quite considerably. How many people are working there now?
Well, now, the interesting thing is, when I was running the project, what I was doing was research and investigation. Now, under the Freedom of Information Act, interestingly, UFOs is the #1 subject that people ask the MOD about. So they spend all their time looking at requests from the public and no time at all actually investigating.
Just explain some of the most compelling cases that you've researched.
The most compelling one was Rendlesham Forest from 1980. I reopened the investigation. This was a UFO that actually landed next to 2 military bases. Indentations were found in the clearing where this thing had come down. The Defence Intelligence staff assessed, they took radiation readings from the landing site, 10 times background. But we've had a number of cases like that. In the middle of my tour of duty in 1993, a UFO flew over 2 military bases in the Midlands, Cosford and Shawbury. It was seen by RAF police officers, seen by the Met officer, a vast triangular-shaped UFO.
And should we be frightened about UFOs? I mean, is there any evidence that they are here to wreak some sort of death and destruction on the planet?
To be fair, there's no evidence of what I would call hostile intent, but given that our air defences are being penetrated, it's got to be of interest, and I just want government and the scientific community to look into this more closely.
So do you have a theory then on what you think these things are, where they're coming from?
Well, if you can talk to all sorts of people, you hear, you know, aliens, you hear time travellers from the future, beings from other dimensions. The honest answer is I don't know, but they're real, they're here, they're tracked on radar, they're seen by the military, and I want it taken seriously.
What do your mates say when you go for a drink with them? Do they think you're a complete nutter on this?
No, they sort of draw comparisons between me and the X-Files, and I get told that I used to run the real X-Files, which I suppose in a sense I did.
I take it you've never had a close encounter yourself. I bet you'd love to have one.
Oh, I'd love to, but sadly I've never even seen a UFO, but I live in hope.
But you believe in them?
Yes, I think the evidence, and you know, you can check this out at the National Archives on the Ministry of Defence website. It's not just me saying this. you know, the truth really is out there.
Well, you say that the biggest job now is fielding these freedom of information requests. I'm sure after people are watching this, there'll be many more coming in because it's absolutely fascinating to,
Yes.
to pick your brains on this.
Well, I think it's a subject that it speaks to those those huge questions. Are we alone or not? I mean, it's fascinating.
It is, and it's got us all thinking. It's certainly got me thinking.
Yeah, it's really interesting to talk to you.
Nick,
Thank
thanks
you very
much for
indeed, Nick.
coming in to
Sure.
talk about that. You're watching BBC News 24. Some certainty I can now predict that Helen Willett